Good day, dear attendees, and welcome back. I'm welcoming you in the third module of the Delphi method lecture series, where we will be discussing the data collecting methodologies and procedures of Delphi technique. Today, we will be learning about data collection methods in the Delphi studies. Before digging deeper on those methods, let's recap module 2, where we started learning conducting Delphi studies, mainly the design and process of a typical Delphi study. In module 2, we checked 3 planning and execution activities for such a study, namely problem definition, panel formulation, including selection and panel size, and Delphi rounds. In summary, problem definition encompasses understanding the research question development, designing the research, and deciding the research sample or the panel. Expert panel formulation process focuses on selecting panel members with appropriate expertise and dealing with the challenge of panel size determination. And finally, Delphi rounding emphasizes the study's variability and dependability on identifying essential rounds of interviews and or surveys. It hints at accepting data triangulation for collecting and using both quantitative and qualitative data in the same study. So let's begin the actual session today by knowing the data collection techniques in typical Delphi studies. Here we will be discussing how different data collecting methods are used by researchers in order to answer the research question determined in the previous stage. As soon as the designing the Delphi study is completed, the research problem is defined, expert panel is formulated, and Delphi rounds are decided, it is the time to collect essential data to continue the process. Please note here that the performing researchers has some flexibility to modify the Delphi study design during the process. It is not written on the rock. If there exist proper and logical grounds, researchers can update the research statement, upgrade the panel, and add a couple of more Delphi rounds when the study is in progress. From starting to the end of the study, the Delphi process commonly includes 4 data collecting methods, namely brainstorming for identifying important factors, literature study to summarize relevant factors covered in the scientific literature, questionnaires for evaluating identified factors and collecting additional data, and interview sessions for collecting data in a real life or real world setting. Today we will be checking them in detail individually. Brainstorming session is the initial round of Delphi study. Here experts are treated as an individual, not panels. In such sessions, they are normally requested to answer some open-ended questions related to the investigating subjects. This round allows participants to provide their own responses to the question without any biases, so that a wide range of knowledge, ideas, and opinions can be captured for future use. Make them highly motivated to answer all questions, even though we do not expect all of them to have in-depth knowledge. In this first round, participants may be requested to limit themselves to one response or answer as many times as they would like, depending on the research question and the number of participants. They are also given the opportunity to revise their answers with the subsequent rounds of the survey. However, researchers must be available to clear the asked questions to the participants. So, valid contact details should be provided accordingly. Brainstorming sessions are conducted through online or face-to-face interviews, group discussions, online or physical meetings, and through pre-planned workshops to identify important decision factors. However, for similar purpose, online or electronic questionnaires are commonly used nowadays, since it does not require panel members to find a specific time window. They can enjoy flexibility in answering the questions. It is advisable to accept participants to use different fonts and colors for emphasizing while answering the questions. They must be allowed to bring any idea on the table for open discussion. Thus, all ideas that can come to their mind should be properly noted or written down. Motivate your respondents to provide honest answers with as much detail as possible for developing a greater depth of knowledge and ideas that are to be collated for future rounds. They can further be requested to define each issue, justify its importance and consequences, and if possible, add comments for elaboration. Once the responses from all panel of experts are well received, the findings are collated and summarized to generate a questionnaire for using in round 2. Based on the experts' statements and explanations, the researchers analyze the generalized material. The analysis sought to identify the most important issues. Throughout this work, similar issues are combined and duplicate meanings are removed. The identified issues are further systemized and grouped into main categories, which are determined as critical factors for the area of investigation. However, before proceeding further, the experts review and validate the generated list to ensure that all issues are included, analyzed, and interpreted correctly by the researcher. Literature study. Although rare, literature review findings are alternatively used as input for Delphi studies. Pre-existing options could be provided for ranking or response. However, this approach could bias the responses or limit the available options, but can save lots of time by reporting factors already covered in the literature. For example, if the experts are requested to list the factors for making rapid decision in a specific field of inquiry, the accumulated list may repeat many factors already addressed in the literature, or same expert did the same job previously for multiple times. This is actually killing time for both parties. Instead, we can engage experts to participate in extending or completing the already generated literature-based list. Thus, it is still keeping the door open for a brainstorming session afterward, but at a higher level. The researchers should identify the existing factors systematically by covering the maximum literature. Adequate scholarly discussion is required before finalizing the list. To do so, supervisors or senior scholars in the investigating domain can be included into the researching team. It is strongly advised to conduct a rigorous and systematic literature review in this regard. Remember that practitioners are mostly unaware of the issues covered in the literature. It is the researcher who is bringing these to them for their reflections. So you as a researcher should be well prepared. All ideas should be open for scholarly discussion and duly noted for written down with sufficient details. The tracing of each identified issues in the literature needs to have in-depth investigation for its validation. The next step are pretty similar with the previous topic. After identifying the related issues, the findings are collated and summarized to generate a questionnaire for use in the initial round. Based on scholarly discussion, the researchers analyze the generated materials to identify the most important issues by combining the similar issues and removing the duplicate meanings. Thus, the researchers proceed further towards formulating the questionnaire for the initial Delphi round. However, the questionnaire should be open for accepting inputs from the participants for additional issues and thus performing brainstorming here. Interview sessions. Based on the appropriateness of the available alternatives and researchers' understanding and preferences, attention must be given to other data collection methods, such as scheduling interviews. It can have some degree of variations. For example, the first round could be a free-flowing interview with each member to gain initial responses. Unlike questionnaires, interviews provide flexibility. For example, an interview provides the opportunity to prove the reasons behind the forecasts, to search for biases in the forecasts, and to follow up on unexpected hints dropped by the interviewees. Literature says that face-to-face or one-to-one interviews are more advantageous if employed in the first round, since it helps to increase the response rate in that and subsequent rounds. Interviews can provide most recent practical information on the investigating topic that is unavailable in other media of data collection. For example, if you are inquiring the current corona situation in a specific region, then it would be wise to interview field experts working in that region. Additionally, this exercise saves time by providing more information within shorter duration. Hence, expert in-depth interviews are an excellent means of obtaining new ideas, but not for providing statistical significance. In-depth interviews with experts have been used with great success as an alternative to questionnaires. In this approach, the same kind of experts are first identified, invited to participate, assured of their anonymity, and in most instances, promised a report based on the interview sequence. Appointments are made at the convenience of the interviewees. Interview protocols are prepared and tested to elicit judgment. High-level staff members or the performing researchers familiar with the study's objectives act as interviewers. Feedback can be introduced if 2 rounds of interviews are employed. However, single round studies are used more frequently. In this feed forward is often Free forward is often employed for presenting information about emerging consensus derived from the prior interviews to the respondents. Questionnaires. Using questionnaires is the widely used technique of data collection in Delphi study. The researchers design a questionnaire with questions relevant to the issue of study. There exist numerous validity issues of incorporated questions that must be considered to develop a good survey. The questionnaire can include questions that solicit quantitative or qualitative data or both. So attention should be given to the Delphi format, particularly the survey questionnaire and accompanying communication. Survey questions must be cleared enough or well explained. If respondents do not understand the questions, they may provide inappropriate answers and become frustrated. And this is a crucial issue while developing the initial board question, the focus of Delphi study. No questionnaire should take more than 30 minutes to be answered. If a long questionnaire is going to be used, participants must be notified beforehand. Researchers must carefully consider the administration mechanism of simultaneously employing email, fax, and web version of the survey. If all media are going to be employed in the same study, it must be ensured that questionnaires for these three formats are equivalently designed and developed. Hence, a pilot study can be conducted with a small advisory panel having the goal of testing and adjusting the Delphi questionnaire to improve comprehension and to work out any procedural problems. The researcher may also pre-test each subsequent questionnaire. The Delphi pilot is essentially important for inexperienced researchers who may be overly ambitious regarding the scope of their research or underestimate the time it will take for a participant to fully respond to the Delphi survey. Thus, flaws and any lurking possibilities from misinterpretations can be identified in the way the questions are asked. Different means are required to be taken for to prevent nuclear proliferation. We will discuss the suggested means in the next slide while preparing the questionnaire. Once qualified, the questionnaires are sent to the participants who complete and return them to the researcher. Ranking and rating the output of the first round are the common response formats. The cover letter should remind the participants about the objective of the study, establish the schedule for the response, and include the returning address. The media that are practical for transmitting the questionnaire and responses are postal mail, fax, web, and email. A classical Delphi approach starts by asking open-ended questions and generating qualitative data. As already discussed, brainstorming is the common practice. Alternatively, a modified approach can be taken with the researcher identifying issues through either a literature review, interview, or consultation with the stakeholders. The round one responses are the basis with which the with which to develop the questions in round 2 questionnaire. Depending upon the research goal, the researchers may direct the focus of the research or be directed by the opinions of the participants. If the purpose of round 1 was to generate a list or identify the important decision factors, then it is common to trim down that list in round 2. The results of first rounds are then analyzed according to the research paradigm. For example, qualitative coding or statistical summarizing into medians plus upper and lower quartiles. Round 2, Delphi takes the form of a structured questionnaire, including statements generated from round 1, which are ranked on a Likert scale. For preventing nuclear proliferation, it is suggested to use rating scale 1 to 10, with 1 being the least effective and practical and 10 being the most effective and practical. However, few recommendations exist in the Delphi literature on optimal number of response categories, with the different numbers being used, ranging from 4 to 11 points scale. Please remember to allow participants to add other suggestions to the list if they have some factors that might be as effective and practical as those listed on or counterproductive. In such cases, you may request reasonings in depth for in-depth understanding. The researchers then administer the survey and analyze the responses. Next, they design another survey based on the responses to the first one and re-administers it, asking respondents to revise their original responses and or answer other questions based on group feedback from the first survey. The researchers reiterate this process until the respondents reach a satisfactory degree of consensus. The respondents are kept anonymous to each other, though not to the researcher, throughout the process. As a part of the process, the responses from each questionnaire are fed back in summarized form to the participants. So online surveys are a great way to engage your audience and get feedback from them. You can use online surveys in any number of ways, including to find out what topic your readers want to learn more about, such as product feedback, market research, customer feedback, academic research, and so on. Making an online survey or poll is easy. There are many great online survey creators out there to help you craft that super survey. When it comes to online survey tools, you can choose between the free or paid route. I checked the available survey tool in the web and come up with these 9 favorite ones. However, I prefer electronic survey. I mean, sending questionnaire through email for handling sensitive data. So this is it from me for module 3. So by now, we have not only started Delphi process, but also learned about its data collecting methodologies and procedures. We had detailed discussions on brainstorming, literature review, interviews, and questionnaires. We will be discussing and learning data analysis and the notion of conducting subsequent Delphi rounds in the next module. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I'm looking forward for your attendance in the next lecture. Have a good day.